Harvard researchers once discovered something astonishing. When people truly believe their future holds abundance, their bodies respond as if the blessing has already arrived. Stress levels drop, the immune system strengthens, and even the heart beats steadier. Think about that. Your belief can physically shape your tomorrow. And yet, how many of us close the very doors God is trying to open because fear whispers louder than faith? Today, I want to speak about a truth older than time. When God opens a door, it is not just an opportunity, it is an overflowing river of blessing. And the question is, will you step through it? There is a promise that echoes across the fabric of human history, a promise that every soul, whether young or old, longs to hold on to. It is the promise that God Himself is not a miser of blessings, but the architect of abundance, the creator of overflowing rivers, the weaver of stars that scatter across the night sky without measure. We live under a heaven that does not ration the sunlight, a sky that does not calculate how much air each person should breathe before the supply runs dry. Everything in nature shouts a truth we often forget. The one who made all this has no shortage, no famine, no stinginess in His heart. And yet, when we look into the mirror of our own lives, we often feel as if we are on the other side of a locked door, waiting for something better, waiting for provision, waiting for healing, waiting for a new chapter to open. That feeling of waiting is deeply human. We see it in the child who wonders if their parents will ever stop fighting, hoping the sound of slammed doors and raised voices will give way to laughter and calm. We see it in the teenager studying under a dim lamp, praying that all the effort will not be wasted, that someday a scholarship or an opportunity will come. We see it in the middle-aged worker, worn from years of striving, longing for a promotion or a breakthrough that will finally affirm the sacrifices made. We see it in the elderly man or woman sitting quietly, hoping for reconciliation with an estranged family member before time runs out. These moments stretch across generations, across social classes, across all the labels that divide us. Waiting is the universal posture of humanity. And into that waiting, the voice of God whispers, "I will open a door that no one can shut." The promise is written in the sacred text of Malachi, where it says, "I will open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing so great that there will not be room enough to receive it." These words are not a metaphor spun by poets, they are a divine declaration. The image is one of a flood, a deluge, a sky bursting wide to release something too vast for human containers. It is not a polite drizzle of kindness. It is an overflowing downpour, as though heaven itself cannot hold back the goodness that longs to meet you. But the question always remains, will we believe it? Will we stand in that open space where the light pours through, or will we retreat into the shadows of disbelief, too afraid to raise our hands to receive what has been promised? Our difficulty often comes from the way life trains us to expect less. Society conditions us to lower our standards, to accept disappointment as normal, to assume that scarcity is the law of existence. You can see it in the language we use. People say, "Don't get your hopes up." They say, "Life is hard and then you die." They mutter about luck as though all of life's blessings were just the roll of a cosmic dice. That mindset poisons expectation, and expectation is the soil in which blessings are planted. A heart that has no expectation of rain will never till the ground. A spirit that assumes there is no harvest will never put seed into the earth. And yet science itself, that discipline we often think stands apart from faith, confirms that belief matters. Studies have shown again and again that human expectation has measurable effects on the body and the mind. People who believe something good is coming recover faster from illness, persist longer in difficult challenges, and often outperform those with no sense of hope. It is as though the body itself listens to the whispers of the soul and prepares for the reality it expects. Think of sunlight breaking through a window. No one stands at dawn questioning whether the sun will rise. It simply does, without fail, painting the sky in colors too grand for human palettes. Yet how often do we doubt that the God who orders the stars also intends for our lives to be marked by light? When we close the curtains of doubt, the sunlight still shines outside, but we sit in self-made darkness. The blessing exists, but it cannot warm the one who will not open the window. That is what divine abundance is like, always present, always flowing, but awaiting the soul that dares to stretch out its hand and lift the latch. There are people who live with a constant fear that if they are blessed, someone else will have less. They treat life as though it were a pie to be divided, assuming that if one person gets a bigger slice, another person must go hungry. Yet creation itself laughs at this idea. When a rose blooms, it does not steal the beauty from another flower. When rain falls upon the fields, it does not choose one blade of grass and ignore the others. The abundance of God is not a zero-sum game. It is multiplication. It is overflow. The more one life shines with blessing, the more that light reflects onto those around them. The blessing of a kind word does not diminish when it is spoken. The blessing of generosity multiplies in both the giver and the receiver. When God opens doors, the blessing is not just for the one who walks through, but for everyone who watches them cross. Psychology tells us something fascinating here. Gratitude researchers have discovered that when people recognize and receive abundance with thankful hearts, their neural pathways literally change. Stress hormones like cortisol decrease, while chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, which regulate joy and peace, increase. The mind and body respond to blessing as if it were nourishment, just like bread or water. Which means that when God promises abundance, He is not only speaking about external circumstances, but also about internal transformations. An open door from heaven often begins with a change in the mind, a shift from despair to hope, from fear to trust, from cynicism to wonder. That shift makes room for blessing to pour in. I remember reading about a man who had lost his job, his savings, and nearly his family during a recession. Everything seemed shut. Every door he knocked on seemed locked tight, and bitterness started to eat away at his hope. One evening, he sat alone in his living room, wrestling with despair, when he noticed his daughter slipping a crayon drawing under his hand. On the paper, she had drawn a door with bright yellow light spilling out from the cracks, and in the corner she wrote, "God has another way." That moment shattered the wall he had built around his heart. He decided to believe that what was closed was not the final word. Within months, an unexpected opportunity opened in a different industry, one that not only restored his livelihood but also gave him a deeper sense of purpose. He would later say that the open door was not just the job, but the awakening of his faith to believe again in God's abundance. Stories like this remind us that blessings are not about luck or random chance. They are woven into the deep order of the universe. Every river flows toward the sea. Every seed carries within it the potential for a harvest. Every sunrise testifies that light will always return after darkness. Blessings are the natural current of creation, and God is the source of that current. When we align our hearts with that truth, we begin to see doors opening all around us, doors that had been invisible before, doors we might have dismissed as walls. The shift is subtle but profound. Where once there was despair, now there is resilience. Where once there was self-pity, now there is vision. Where once there was fear, now there is courage. And courage is the key that turns the handle of the door God has opened. The most astonishing part is that the promise of overflowing blessing is not reserved for the elite, the wealthy, or the spiritually perfect. It is for the broken, the weary, the overlooked, the ones who feel like they're standing in the hallway of life with no invitation inside. The heart of God has always been for the wanderer and the forgotten. The prodigal son who squandered everything still found a feast waiting for him when he came home. The thief on the cross, who had nothing to offer but his final breath, still found the door of paradise opened wide. These stories endure because they shatter the lie that only the deserving are blessed. The truth is that blessing comes not because of merit, but because of mercy, not because we are flawless, but because God is generous beyond comprehension. This promise should ignite both awe and trembling. Awe because we realize the vastness of what is offered. Trembling because blessings are not neutral. To be blessed is to be entrusted. To have more than enough is to carry the responsibility of sharing. When God opens a door and floods a life with abundance, the overflow is meant to spill into communities, families, strangers, even enemies. That is the design of divine abundance, not to be hoarded, but to be multiplied through generosity and love. A life that clutches blessings too tightly soon finds them turning sour, but a life that lets them flow discovers that the supply never runs out. Look at the sky after a storm. The clouds break open, the light spills across the horizon, and the whole world seems washed clean. That is what it feels like when God opens the door of abundance in a human life. It does not erase every struggle, but it reframes them. Hardships no longer feel like dead ends. They become part of a larger story, a preparation for something greater. Failures are no longer tombstones, but stepping stones. Even pain becomes fertile ground where compassion and wisdom grow. This is the deeper meaning of overflowing blessing. not merely material gain, but the transformation of the soul into a vessel that can carry both joy and sorrow with strength. When you begin to believe this, something stirs inside you. The heart beats faster, the spirit lifts, and a new kind of energy awakens. That is not wishful thinking. That is alignment with reality. The God who stretched galaxies into being has no shortage of power to stretch a life into new horizons. The one who carved canyons with rivers and painted mountaintops with snow has no shortage of creativity to carve new paths for your future. The promise is certain. Doors will open, blessings will overflow, and you will stand in a story larger than your own. The question is whether you will walk to the threshold and step into the light. There is something sacred about the space between promise and fulfillment. It is in that space that character is built, strength is tested, and the soul is stretched to its true dimensions. People long for blessings to fall into their laps as if heaven were a vending machine, but history and scripture both tell us that blessings rarely arrive without preparation. God may open a door, but if the person standing before it has not been shaped for what lies on the other side, the blessing can collapse into a burden. The same rain that brings harvest to a tilled field will bring rot to a field of weeds. Preparation is what allows blessing to take root and multiply rather than slip through our fingers. Think about the Olympic runner who steps onto the track. The world sees the medal, the victory lap, the anthem rising in the stadium. What the world does not see are the years of sweat poured into empty practice fields, the mornings where the body screamed to stay in bed, the sacrifices of comfort and ease. The glory of the medal is real, but it only belongs to the one who was ready for it. If the medal had been handed to them on day one without training, it would have meant nothing. The preparation gave the blessing its meaning. In the same way, when God prepares a door of opportunity, He often places us in seasons of training long before the handle turns. Those seasons may feel lonely or frustrating, but they are holy ground. Preparation is not punishment. It is formation. The clay must be pressed and shaped before it becomes a vessel capable of holding wine. The wood must be carved before it becomes an instrument capable of carrying music. The soil must be broken before it can welcome the seed. Blessings are not only about receiving, they are about becoming someone who can sustain what is received. Without that transformation, blessings can evaporate as quickly as they appear. How many lottery winners find themselves bankrupt within years because they were not prepared to steward wealth? How many people pray for relationships only to sabotage them because their hearts have not been healed? Blessings without preparation are like water poured into a basket. They cannot be held. Even science teaches us that readiness shapes outcomes. Neuroscientists talk about something called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repetition and discipline. When a person chooses discipline again and again, they are not simply practicing an action. They are reshaping the architecture of their mind. New pathways form, old ones weaken, and the brain becomes primed for a future it once could not handle. This is preparation written into biology itself. It means that the choices you make when no one is watching are not wasted. They are etching grooves into your very being, grooves that make you ready for the open door when it comes. There is also a psychological dimension to preparation. Studies show that people who rehearse positive habits during times of calm are better equipped to handle crises when they arrive. Soldiers train endlessly before stepping onto the battlefield, not because training itself is glamorous, but because instinct must be prepared before chaos erupts. Pilots rehearse emergency landings again and again so that when disaster strikes, their preparation carries them through what panic would otherwise destroy. The same is true in daily life. When we prepare ourselves spiritually, mentally, and emotionally during quiet seasons, we build a reservoir that can sustain us when opportunity or trial knocks. Without that preparation, doors can open, but fear or immaturity can keep us from walking through. There is a divine mystery in how preparation often disguises itself as obscurity. People long for public success, but resist private shaping. God seems to do His deepest work in the hidden places, where applause is absent and patience is required. Think of David, tending sheep in the fields. It was in the solitude of pastures, fighting off lions and bears, that his courage and skill with a sling were forged. When the door opened and Goliath stood mocking before Israel, David was not scrambling for preparation. He was ready. The battle was won long before the stone left his sling, because years of unseen preparation had made him capable. Blessings tend to meet those who have been faithful with the little things long before the great things arrive. There's a temptation in our culture to despise small beginnings. We measure success by numbers, influence, and visibility. Yet the kingdom of God measures by faithfulness. The seed that looks insignificant in the hand becomes a tree in the ground, and the tree becomes a forest in time. Blessings unfold in the same way. They meet the one who is willing to water the seed even when no fruit is in sight, the one who keeps showing up to the practice, the study, the prayer, the discipline, while others quit out of boredom or impatience. Preparation is rarely glamorous, but it is always transformative. When you look at the life of anyone who carried extraordinary blessing, you find a backstory of preparation. Joseph was given a dream of greatness, but before the palace came the pit and the prison. Moses was called to lead a nation, but before the Red Sea came 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep. Jesus himself spent 30 years in quiet preparation before 3 years of public ministry that altered the course of history. Blessing without preparation cannot endure. Preparation is what allows blessing to not only be received, but also to ripple outward into generations. Sometimes preparation looks like failure. It feels like doors closing, plans unraveling, prayers unanswered. What we often interpret as delay or rejection can be part of the very shaping required for us to carry blessing without breaking under its weight. Closed doors are not always cruel. Sometimes they are classrooms. Every failure carries within it seeds of wisdom that success rarely teaches. People who walk through seasons of loss often emerge with resilience, empathy, and perspective that make them capable of stewarding blessings with humility. Without that preparation, success can inflate the ego until it bursts. Blessings are safest in the hands of the prepared heart. Think of the farmer who waits for rain. If the soil has not been tilled, the rain will only create mud. If the ground has been broken and the seed has been planted, the rain will bring forth a harvest. Rain is the same, but the result depends on preparation. Blessings are much like rain. They fall in abundance, but only the prepared can receive them as harvest rather than chaos. This is why preparation is an act of faith. You till the ground before you see the cloud. You plant the seed before you hear the thunder. You live as though blessing is certain, even when the sky looks empty. That posture of readiness is often what invites the door of blessing to swing open. Preparation also requires letting go of what will not fit through the new door. Some blessings demand that old habits, toxic relationships, or limiting beliefs be left behind. Carrying them into the new season would corrupt the very thing God longs to give. This letting go can feel like loss, but is actually alignment. The runner who sheds weight before the race is not being punished. They are being prepared to run without hindrance. The same is true in life. Blessings often wait on the other side of surrender. Only the prepared heart, willing to release what no longer serves, can walk through the new door unburdened. Preparation is not about striving to earn blessings. It is about aligning with them. A river does not flow because the fisherman deserves it. The fisherman prepares the net so that when the river flows, he can receive its bounty. God's blessings are rivers. Preparation is the net. Without readiness, the water rushes by unused. With readiness, it becomes sustenance, abundance, overflow. Every act of discipline, every quiet choice of faithfulness, every unseen hour of practice is a way of weaving a stronger net. What makes preparation difficult is its hiddenness. We crave immediate results, visible progress, instant gratification. Preparation rarely offers that. It is often silent, repetitive, and unnoticed. Yet the unseen hours are the birthplace of destiny. The sculptor chips at marble for months before a figure emerges. The writer drafts pages that no one will read before the book takes form. The student wrestles with concepts long before mastery is visible. Blessing is like a spotlight, and preparation ensures we are ready to stand in it without being blinded. There is a profound peace that comes when we embrace preparation as sacred rather than resenting it as delay. Suddenly, the waiting seasons are not wasted. They are classrooms of wisdom. They are gyms where muscles are built. They are gardens where roots grow deep. Preparation reframes the silence of heaven as the shaping of earth. It transforms obscurity into holy ground where character is sculpted. When the door opens, the prepared are not surprised. They are steady. They are grateful. They are ready to walk through not as beggars clutching at scraps, but as vessels able to carry overflow. When you understand this, you begin to live differently. You stop despising the small tasks. You stop resenting the quiet seasons. You begin to see discipline as a form of worship, preparation as a declaration of faith, readiness as a way of saying, I trust that the blessing is real, even if I cannot yet see it. That posture not only prepares you for the blessing, but also brings joy into the preparation itself. The training ground becomes a place of hope rather than drudgery. The waiting becomes a place of intimacy with God rather than a barren desert. Blessings will always come because the heart of God is generous beyond measure. The real question is whether we will be ready to hold them. Preparation is the bridge between promise and fulfillment, the sacred space where heaven shapes earth, where the unseen becomes visible. Every moment of discipline, every act of faithfulness, every choice to keep going when it would be easier to quit is part of that bridge. When the door opens, the prepared walk through not with trembling hands, but with steady hearts, carrying blessings that will not only change their lives, but ripple outward to touch the lives of countless others. Expectation is one of the most powerful forces in human life, though it often hides in plain sight. It whispers quietly beneath every choice we make, every risk we take, every fear we wrestle with, and every hope we cling to. What we expect in the depths of our hearts often becomes the very thing that shapes the direction of our lives. Expectation is like the unseen compass of the soul, pointing us toward what we believe is possible. When we carry a spirit of defeat, we stumble into patterns that reinforce it. When we carry a spirit of faith, we begin to walk paths we never thought existed. Expectation is not only a psychological phenomenon, it is a spiritual law that God Himself set in motion. Psychologists call this the Pygmalion effect, the idea that people tend to rise or fall to the level of expectation placed upon them. A teacher who believes a student is capable of greatness often finds that the student begins to live into that belief, while a teacher who assumes failure often sees it fulfilled. The same principle plays out in relationships, careers, health, and even faith. When you expect little, you prepare little, you risk little, and you receive little. When you expect abundance, you begin to walk with a confidence that draws it toward you. The irony is that expectation operates whether we are conscious of it or not. The question is not whether you expect, but what you expect. Faith itself is often described in Scripture as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That description is not just poetic. It reveals a profound truth about the human mind and heart. To expect blessing is to live as though it is already real. It is to water the ground before the rain arrives, to set the table before the guests have walked through the door. Expectation is faith translated into posture. Is the way belief manifests in daily action. And when God looks at the heart, He sees not only our words, but the hidden expectations we carry, and He responds to that alignment. One of the most striking illustrations of this is the farmer. The farmer who expects a harvest prepares the soil, scatters the seed, and works under the hot sun with sweat dripping into the earth. The farmer who does not expect rain will not waste time planting. Expectation determines action long before the outcome is visible. That same principle applies to every area of our lives. A student who expects to pass the exam studies diligently, even when no one is watching. An athlete who expects to compete at the highest level trains with intensity, even when no audience applauds. A believer who expects God's blessing prays with boldness, forgives with freedom, and walks with confidence. Expectation is not passive. It is active preparation born from trust in what is to come. Science gives us a glimpse of why this works. When a person expects something, the brain begins to adjust its chemistry and focus. Positive expectations trigger the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that fuels motivation and goal-directed behavior. The body quite literally gears up to pursue the thing it anticipates. Negative expectations do the opposite, releasing stress hormones like cortisol that drain energy and cloud decision-making. In this way, the body becomes a mirror of the soul. What you expect does not just live in your imagination, it lives in your cells, your hormones, your heartbeat. Expectation is embodied. It shapes how you stand, how you speak, how you act, and how you interpret the world around you. Think of two people facing the same challenge. One expects to fail, so every obstacle confirms their prediction. They interpret delays as signs they were never meant to succeed. They retreat, reinforcing the cycle of failure. The other expects to overcome, so every obstacle becomes a test to be solved, every delay a chance to learn, every setback a setup for a comeback. The difference is not the challenge, but the expectation carried into it. Life bends toward what the heart rehearses. There is also a spiritual weight to expectation that goes beyond psychology. God responds to faith not because faith manipulates him, but because faith aligns us with his nature. Expectation is like a key that fits the lock of divine abundance. It does not force the door open, it prepares us to walk through when the door swings wide. Jesus often said, "Be it unto you according to your faith." Not according to your status, not according to your wealth, not according to your talent, but according to your faith, your expectation. Those who came to him expecting healing walked away healed. Those who came to him doubting walked away unchanged. The blessing was present in both situations, but only expectation unlocked it. It is sobering to think about how often we sabotage blessings through low expectations. People pray for provision but secretly expect scarcity, so they miss the opportunities placed in front of them. They ask for peace but expect anxiety, so they rehearse worry instead of practicing trust. They long for love but expect rejection, so they build walls that keep connection out. The door may be open, but expectation keeps them sitting outside. Low expectation is one of the most subtle thieves of destiny because it convinces us we are protecting ourselves from disappointment, when in reality, we are cutting ourselves off from abundance. Children reveal the purity of expectation more clearly than adults. A child who trusts their parent does not question whether food will appear at the table. They sit with empty plates, already laughing, already ready to eat, because they expect provision. That trust is not naive, is the natural posture of one who knows they are loved. Somewhere along the way, life bruises us, and we trade that posture for cynicism. We decide it is safer to expect little so that we cannot be disappointed. Yet God calls us back to a childlike faith, not because he wants us to be naive, but because he knows expectation is the soil in which his blessings grow. The one who dares to hope again, to expect again, to believe again, is the one who sees doors swing open. Consider also how expectation shapes community. When a leader expects greatness from their team, they inspire higher performance. When parents expect wisdom and courage from their children often rise to meet it. When friends expect loyalty and kindness from each other, they build bonds that endure storms. Expectation is contagious. It sets the tone for relationships. In contrast, when we expect betrayal, laziness, or failure, we unconsciously create an atmosphere where those things flourish. Expectation is not only personal, it is cultural. Entire families, organizations, even nations can be shaped by the collective expectations they carry. That is why shifting expectation is not only about individual faith, but about generational transformation. There is also a sobering side to expectation. Sometimes our expectations are too small. We ask for survival when God intends abundance. We pray for crumbs when he prepares a feast. We think in terms of minimums, just enough to get by, just enough to keep going, while God speaks in terms of overflow. Our narrow expectations do not limit God's power, but they can limit our capacity to receive it. If you hold out a thimble under a waterfall, you will only catch a thimbleful, not because the water is scarce, but because your container is too small. Expectation is the size of your container. When you expect little, you prepare little. When you expect much, you expand your capacity to receive. This is not about greed or entitlement. It is about trust in the character of God. To expect blessing is not to demand specific outcome. It is to trust that whatever God gives will be good, even if it arrives in a form you did not imagine. Expectation is not about controlling the future. It is about walking into the future with confidence that God is already there, preparing something for you. That posture transforms fear into anticipation, anxiety into peace, despair into hope. It is the difference between waiting in dread and waiting in excitement. Think of a traveler waiting at a train station. If they expect the train to never arrive, every passing minute feels like torture. If they expect the train is on its way, every passing minute builds anticipation. The same station, the same wait, the same time, but expectation changes the experience. Life is much like that. Waiting with expectation turns the wilderness into preparation. Waiting without expectation turns the wilderness into despair. The external situation may be unchanged, but the internal posture shifts everything. History is full of people whose expectation changed the trajectory of their lives. Inventors who expected solutions persisted until they found them. Leaders who expected freedom for their people marched forward against impossible odds. Prophets who expected God's voice prepared their hearts and became conduits of revelation. None of them had certainty. All of them had expectation. That expectation pulled them through darkness into light, through trial into triumph. Their lives remind us that expectation is not passive wishing. It is active faith that fuels perseverance. There is a reason why expectation carries such power. It reveals what we believe about God, about ourselves, and about the world. To expect blessing is to declare that God is good, that we are loved, and that life is meaningful. To expect failure is to declare the opposite, even if we never say it aloud. Expectation is theology lived out in practice. It shapes not only our emotions, but our very identity. Those who live with expectation of blessing begin to see themselves as chosen, valued, equipped. Those who live with expectation of failure often see themselves as cursed, forgotten, unworthy. The belief becomes a lens, and the lens shapes the story. That is why shifting expectation can feel like shifting the foundation of a house. It requires courage to hope again after disappointment. It requires trust to expect abundance after seasons of scarcity. It requires faith to plant seeds again after years of barren fields. Yet every great story begins with someone who dared to expect something greater than what they saw in the moment. Expectation is the seed of transformation, and when planted in faith, it grows into a harvest of blessing. When God opens doors of overflowing blessing, they often swing wide to those who are already expecting them. Not because expectation earns the blessing, but because it positions the heart to walk through without hesitation. Expectation keeps the lamp lit during the long night, so that when the dawn breaks, the soul is ready. Expectation fills the jars with water before Jesus turns them into wine. Expectation rolls the stone away from the tomb before life emerges. Expectation stretches the net before the fish overflow. It is faith dressed in readiness, and it is the posture that turns promise into reality. Closed doors are some of the hardest experiences to understand in life. They sting. They confuse. They often leave us pacing in circles, questioning our worth, questioning God, questioning whether our lives are moving in any direction at all. A closed door can be a relationship that never blossomed, a career path that suddenly crumbled, a prayer that seemed to rise into the heavens and return in silence. In the rawness of those moments, it feels as though rejection has written its name across our story. Yet as time passes, there are moments when we look back and realize those very closures saved us from storms we never saw coming. What felt like the end was in truth a redirection. Closed doors are not just about denial. They are about divine protection. The human heart often chases what it wants with little understanding of the consequences that lie ahead. A teenager desperate for freedom dreams of independence, but may not realize the dangers that await without guidance. An adult aching for success may crave promotions that would drown them in stress and strip away family time. Someone longing for love may be drawn toward a person whose hidden wounds would have scarred them deeply. We see only a slice of the picture. God sees the entire canvas. When a door closes, it is often His hand pulling us away from corridors that would have collapsed beneath us. Think about how the human immune system works. Every day it shuts doors to threats we never even knew existed. It fights bacteria, viruses, and toxins silently, closing pathways before danger spreads. We rarely thank it because we rarely notice it. We only see the door that was closed when illness does not arrive. The same principle applies spiritually. There are doors God shuts that we never recognize. A friendship that never began, a job interview that was rejected, a journey interrupted by circumstance. These may all be immune responses for the soul, protecting us from harm we could not yet detect. Closed doors also train us in resilience. The absence of immediate fulfillment forces us to wrestle, to deepen our roots, to search for meaning beyond surface gratification. A seed pressed into the soil is surrounded by darkness before it ever breaks into the light. The darkness is not punishment, it is protection. It is where roots grow strong enough to support the tree that will someday tower above the ground. Closed doors press us into a similar season. They compel us to stretch our inner life, to build character, to confront fears, and to learn endurance. If every door opened without delay, we would remain shallow. It is the resistance of a closed door that strengthens the soul to carry blessings when they come. Psychology confirms that humans grow most in the face of resistance. Studies on post-traumatic growth reveal that people often emerge from difficult experiences with greater resilience, deeper compassion, and stronger purpose. Closed doors are part of this dynamic. They are not the absence of growth, but the catalyst for it. When a dream is delayed, the mind is forced to adapt, to find new strategies, to reframe the situation. The pain of rejection can become the soil of creativity, pushing people to innovate, to discover talents they never would have explored if the first door had opened. The frustration becomes fuel, and the closed door becomes an unexpected teacher. Consider the story of someone who loses a job they loved. At first, despair sets in. Identity feels shattered. Fear of the future grows louder by the day. Yet in that empty space, the person discovers gifts that had been dormant: writing, mentoring, creating, building. Months later, a new opportunity arises, one they never would have noticed if the old door had remained open. Looking back, what once felt like devastation is reframed as redirection. The closed door was not a cruel dismissal. It was the hand of Providence steering them toward a different horizon. We often forget that closed doors shape our desires as much as they shape our paths. They strip away illusions, forcing us to confront what we truly want. A person may think they crave wealth until the pursuit leaves them drained. The closed door forces them to question whether meaning lies elsewhere. Someone may chase after recognition until they find themselves empty despite applause. The closed door interrupts the cycle and redirects them toward depth instead of vanity. In this sense, a closed door is not only protection from external harm, but protection from internal distortion. It shields us from the self-destructive parts of our own desires. There is a sacred mystery in unanswered prayer. People cry out for one outcome and hear silence, only to later realize that the silence itself was mercy. The child who begs for candy at every meal would be harmed if the parent always said yes. The refusal is not neglect but love. In the same way, God's closed doors often feel harsh in the moment, but carry love deeper than we can comprehend. Every no is either a not yet or a not this, but is never a declaration of worthlessness. Closed doors say nothing about your value. They speak everything about God's wisdom. Science offers an intriguing parallel. In architecture, some doors are deliberately designed as fire doors. They shut tightly, restricting movement, limiting freedom, even feeling like an obstacle. But their purpose is to prevent destruction from spreading. A closed fire door saves lives. It looks like restriction, but is in truth safety. Spiritually, God's closed doors often function this way. They contain fires we never saw, shielding us from devastation. To resent them is natural, but to trust them is wisdom. Trust is the hardest part. When faced with a closed door, the instinct is to push harder, to force it open, to batter ourselves against it until exhaustion sets in. Yet trust invites us to step back, to breathe, to believe that another door will open in its time. This does not mean passivity. It means alignment. It means living with the courage to knock on new doors without bitterness, to walk new paths without clinging to the old. It means trusting that closed doors are not dead ends, but detours in a larger journey. Stories across generations confirm this pattern. Inventors whose early projects failed went on to discover breakthroughs that changed the world. Leaders whose first attempts collapsed became wiser, more compassionate guides for their people. Individuals whose relationships ended painfully found deeper love later on, often with gratitude that the earlier door had remained shut. In hindsight, closed doors are some of the most eloquent testimonies of God's providence. Yet they rarely feel that way in the moment. That is why faith must walk before sight. When the heart aches before a locked door, it helps to remember that blessing is not always about gain. Sometimes blessing is about protection. Sometimes blessing is about timing. Sometimes blessing is about being redirected to something we never would have chosen on our own. The mystery is that closed doors are often as much a gift as open ones, though their wrapping is darker. The gift of an open door is joy. The gift of a closed door is wisdom. Together, they weave a life of depth and resilience. People who learn to embrace closed doors live with a peculiar freedom. They are not crushed by rejection because they know it is not the final word. They are not paralyzed by detours because they trust new roads will appear. They do not cling desperately to what slips away because they believe abundance is still ahead. That posture allows them to walk through life with peace, even in uncertainty. They trust that every door, whether open or closed, is held by a hand greater than theirs. The heart of the mystery is that closed doors remind us we are not in control of everything, and that is not a curse but a mercy. If we were given full control, we would often destroy ourselves with our own short-sightedness. The closed door humbles us, teaches us dependence, and invites us to surrender. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. Is laying down our limited plans in trust that the author of life has written something fuller. That surrender is where peace is found, even in the hallway between doors. So when you encounter a closed door, resist the urge to define it as failure. See it as part of a larger story, still unfolding. Trust that what feels like a setback may in fact be the foundation for a breakthrough. Believe that closed doors are not meant to keep you small, but to direct you toward a space where your soul can grow, where your gifts can flourish, where your life can bless others. The mystery is not meant to crush you, but to shape you. And when the next door swings open, you will step through with deeper wisdom, greater strength, and a clearer vision of the God who guided you there. When people hear the word blessing, the first image that often rises in the mind is material gain. A new car, a bigger house, a better paycheck, something visible, something that shines in the eyes of others, something that seems to mark success. Our culture has trained us to measure worth by accumulation, as though life's fullness could be tallied in the digits of a bank account or the size of a closet. Yet blessings in their truest form run deeper than anything you can own. They are woven into the very fabric of existence, into the moments when your lungs fill with air without your asking, into the nights when your heart beats steadily while you sleep, into the laughter shared at a dinner table, into the peace that comes not from things, but from presence. Blessings that overflow are not always the ones that can be touched with the hand. They are often the ones that can only be felt with the soul. Consider the gift of health. Many people do not realize its value until it falters. A body that wakes with energy, muscles that respond when called upon, a mind that can concentrate without fog. These are blessings that many wealthy people would trade their fortunes for if illness struck. The absence of pain, the ability to walk, the rhythm of a heartbeat, the capacity to smile without strain. These are treasures that often go unnoticed in the rush for more visible forms of prosperity. Yet without them, no material possession carries meaning. A palace is a little comfort to one who cannot breathe freely. A fortune is hollow to one who has lost their peace of mind. Science has shown that gratitude for non-material blessings has profound effects on the brain. Neuroimaging reveals that practicing gratitude strengthens neural pathways associated with happiness and reduces activity in regions tied to anxiety. People who count their blessings, not in dollars but in simple joys, show lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that eats away at health when it lingers. When someone begins their day by naming what they are thankful for, the warmth of a bed, the safety of a home, the taste of morning coffee, the voice of a loved one, their brain begins to rewire itself, training the mind to notice abundance rather than lack. This reshaping creates resilience. It arms the spirit against despair. It allows joy to spring up not from what is gained, but from what is already present. Blessings extend into the realm of relationships. A loyal friend who listens when the world grows heavy is a greater treasure than gold. A child's smile, unearned and spontaneous, is a reminder of love's purity. A partner's hand held in the quiet moments of life is a gift that no marketplace can sell. Even the small kindness of a stranger, a door held open, a word of encouragement, a shared laugh on a difficult day, carries the weight of blessing. These moments enrich the heart in ways possessions never can. Loneliness is one of the deepest wounds of modern society, and no amount of wealth can heal it. Connection, empathy, presence. These are the blessings that overflow into meaning, grounding us in the truth that to be fully alive is to be in relationship. History shows that those who endured the harshest conditions often clung not to possessions, but to inner blessings. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the concentration camps, wrote of how those who found meaning, even in suffering, could survive almost anything. The blessing was not escape from hardship, but the discovery of purpose in its midst. This kind of blessing cannot be measured by what is gained or lost. It is measured by the fire that refuses to go out in the soul, even when all external circumstances rage against it. To find blessing and meaning is to be untouchable, because meaning gives light even in darkness. Peace of mind is another overflowing blessing, one often overlooked until it disappears. The ability to rest without the weight of constant worry, to trust that tomorrow will hold what it needs to hold, to sit in silence without being tormented by racing thoughts. This peace is one of the greatest gifts a human being can receive. Many spend their lives chasing material gain only to realize what they longed for most was quiet within. Spiritual traditions across the world have echoed the same truth: peace surpasses wealth. The scriptures remind us that God offers a peace that passes understanding, a peace that does not depend on circumstances but on His presence. That peace is a blessing that flows into every corner of life, strengthening health, deepening relationships, and opening space for joy. Psychologists note that peace and gratitude are deeply linked. When the mind practices gratitude, it reduces comparison, which is one of the greatest thieves of peace. Social media fuels endless comparison, convincing people that blessings are only real when they look impressive to others. Yet the truth is that the richest blessings are often invisible to outsiders. They are known in the quiet moments when you realize your heart is content, when you realize you are surrounded by love, when you realize you are sustained by breath, by sunlight, by God's grace. Contentment is a radical blessing in a culture driven by endless appetite. Blessings also flow in opportunities to give. To bless others is itself a blessing. A life that receives without giving grows stagnant, like water trapped without motion. But when blessings are shared, they multiply. A meal prepared for someone in need, time given to a friend in crisis, resources offered to a community, encouragement spoken into a weary soul. Each of these acts not only blesses the receiver, but fills the giver with purpose. Scientists studying altruism found that giving activates reward centers in the brain, releasing dopamine and oxytocin, creating a sense of joy often called the helper's high. God's design of the human spirit reflects this truth. We are wired to find fulfillment not only in receiving blessings, but in being a channel through which blessings flow. It is a mistake to confine the word blessing to prosperity that glitters. Some of the greatest blessings come wrapped in trials. Struggles often strip away illusions, sharpening our focus on what matters most. Illness may awaken gratitude for life itself. Financial strain may deepen appreciation for simplicity. Loss may open our eyes to the beauty of love that remains. These blessings are not sought, but discovered in the refining fire of hardship. They teach the soul to recognize grace in places it never thought to look. The overflowing blessing in suffering is the discovery of resilience, empathy, and a deeper connection with God. The divine nature of blessing is that it transcends the temporary. Material possessions are fleeting. They break, decay, disappear. But the blessings of love, peace, meaning, and connection endure. They follow into eternity. They shape not just the quality of our days, but the substance of who we become. They are written into the soul, not stored in closets or accounts. This is why the wisdom of old speaks of treasures that moth and rust cannot destroy. The truest blessings are imperishable because they are woven into the eternal fabric of life. When people learn to recognize non-material blessings, life takes on a richness that possessions alone can never provide. Morning becomes sacred, not because of luxury, but because of the sunrise. Work becomes meaningful, not because of salary, but because of service. Relationships become precious, not because of status, but because of shared humanity. Even pain becomes a teacher, not because it is welcome, but because it reveals strength that would have remained hidden. Every moment becomes an opportunity to see abundance. The heart trained to notice these blessings walks differently through the world. It does not envy easily because it sees what others overlook. It does not despair as quickly because it finds reasons for gratitude even in difficulty. It does not cling as desperately to possessions because it knows that life's deepest riches cannot be purchased. This heart carries a quiet confidence, a joy that is not fragile, a hope that cannot be stolen. That is what it means to live in the overflow of blessing. To speak of overflowing blessings is to speak of a life so filled with gratitude, peace, love, and purpose that it spills out into the lives of others. It is not about having everything. It is about recognizing that you already have more than enough. It is about seeing that every breath, every relationship, every moment of peace, every spark of joy, every lesson in hardship, every chance to give, all of it is abundance. When the heart sees this, the soul is never empty. Blessings flow like a river, not because circumstances are perfect, but because perspective has shifted. God's design for blessing was never limited to possessions. He offers the blessing of His presence, which transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. He offers the blessing of wisdom, which guides choices and protects from harm. He offers the blessing of joy, which rises even in sorrow. He offers the blessing of eternal life, which cannot be measured in earthly terms. These blessings overflow beyond imagination. They do not fade with time. They are not stolen by circumstance. They are anchored in His unchanging nature. The invitation is to open your eyes to the abundance already around you, to pause and notice the pulse of your heart, the laughter of your loved ones, the strength you carry through hardship, the moments of peace that surprise you in chaos. To see blessing not as something waiting in the distance, but as something present here and now. To live in that recognition is to live in overflow. When a door opens in life, the moment carries both wonder and weight. There is relief because the waiting season has ended, but there is also a trembling sense of responsibility. Open doors demand courage. They demand trust. They demand a willingness to leave the familiar behind and step into a space that feels uncertain. Many people pray for opportunity, for change, for abundance, but when the moment actually comes, fear rises like a wall. The comfort of what is known can seem safer than the promise of what is new, and so the temptation grows to stand still in the doorway, neither retreating nor advancing, hoping that clarity will arrive without movement. Yet the truth is that doors are not open for staring through. They are open for walking through. The strange paradox of blessing is that receiving it is not passive. When God opens a door, it is not an automatic transfer of peace, joy, or abundance into your life. It is an invitation. Is a call to act. The Israelites in the wilderness were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, yet the land had to be entered, cultivated, defended. The promise was theirs, but the courage to walk into it was still required. Every open door carries this same dynamic. It holds possibility, but it demands participation. The danger is that many will admire the doorway and never cross its threshold, choosing the safety of old habits instead of the risk of new horizons. The psychology of action helps explain this tension. Humans are wired to prefer the familiar, even if it is painful, over the unknown, because the brain is designed to detect threat in uncertainty. Neuroscientists call this the negativity bias. The unfamiliar often triggers the same neural alarms as danger, causing anxiety even when the opportunity is good. This is why people sometimes sabotage themselves when blessings arrive. The new job feels intimidating, the new relationship feels vulnerable, the new responsibility feels overwhelming, and the instinct is to retreat to what feels manageable. To step through an open door requires not just faith, but a rewiring of the mind to embrace growth instead of fear. Fear is not the only barrier. Pride can also whisper at the doorway. Some resist stepping into a new season because they fear it will expose their limitations. To take a new opportunity is to risk failing publicly, and pride recoils at the thought of humiliation. Others hesitate because stepping through an open door means leaving behind a narrative that has become comfortable. The identity of being overlooked, rejected, or waiting becomes part of who they are, and the thought of stepping into blessing feels like unfamiliar territory. Yet open doors call us to shed old skins. They call us to stop defining ourselves by lack and begin defining ourselves by promise. That transformation can be as frightening as it is liberating. The spiritual reality is that God does not open doors randomly. He opens them in alignment with preparation, timing, and purpose. The door that opens in your life is not an accident. It is not a meaningless coincidence. It is a sign that you have reached a season where you are ready to walk into something larger than yourself. To stand still at that threshold is to delay what God has prepared. The blessing is real, but it becomes tangible only through movement. Faith without works remains abstract. The open door without action remains a picture rather than a pathway. Consider the metaphor of water. A river flows and brings life because it moves. Stagnant water, by contrast, grows foul. Blessings operate the same way. When received but not acted upon, they stagnate. Skills unused decay. Opportunities unseized vanish. Relationships neglected fade. The blessing becomes a burden, not because it was false, but because it was never allowed to flow. To step through an open door is to allow blessing to stay alive, to keep it moving, to transform it into something that multiplies. History is filled with examples of people who stood at open doors and chose to walk through despite fear. A young Martin Luther King Jr. did not know what awaited him when he accepted the call to lead a movement, but he stepped through with trembling courage. Rosa Parks did not know the storm that would follow her refusal to stand, but she stepped through the door of resistance that opened before her. These were not easy steps. They carried risk, cost, and sacrifice. Yet the overflow of blessing that followed their courage has touched generations far beyond their lifetimes. The principle holds true in smaller, quieter ways as well. A parent choosing to step into the open door of responsibility creates blessing for children. An artist choosing to step into the open door of creativity shares beauty with the world. A teacher stepping into the open door of influence shapes lives. Every step through a doorway multiplies blessing, often in ways unseen at first. The fear of stepping through often disguises itself as waiting for certainty. Many people stand at the threshold saying they are praying for confirmation, when in truth, they are hoping God will remove every risk before they move. Yet faith is not certainty. Faith is movement in the presence of uncertainty. If every outcome were guaranteed before stepping forward, there would be no need for trust. God rarely reveals the entire journey at once. He opens the door and calls us to take the first step, trusting that light will be given for the next. To demand full clarity before acting is to miss the essence of faith. There is also a hidden danger in refusing to step through. When an open door is ignored long enough, it can close again. Opportunities are not always permanent. A relationship that could have grown withers if left unattended. A chance to learn fades if never seized. A moment to forgive may never return if bitterness hardens the heart. Open doors are often invitations that carry urgency. To hesitate indefinitely is to risk losing what could have been. The tragedy of life is not only in the doors that never open, but in the ones that opened and were never entered. Stepping through does not mean recklessness. It does not mean running blindly without thought. It means acknowledging the fear, but moving anyway. It means weighing the cost, but deciding the cost of staying the same is greater. It means trusting that God's provision accompanies His invitation. Those who step through find that strength meets them along the way, often in unexpected forms. Encouragement arrives through others. Wisdom rises in the moment of need. Grace sustains in the face of trial. None of this is visible from outside the doorway. It is revealed only after the step is taken. The act of stepping through an open door also transforms identity. The person who is waiting becomes the person who is walking. The one who is longing becomes the one who is living. With each door crossed, confidence grows, resilience strengthens, and faith deepens. The memory of past courage fuels future courage. Life becomes a series of steps, each one expanding capacity, each one enlarging vision, each one moving closer to the fullness of destiny. One of the greatest lies that keeps people frozen at the doorway is the belief that they are unworthy of blessing. They look at their flaws, their failures, their past mistakes, and they convince themselves that the open door must be for someone else. They disqualify themselves before they even step forward. Yet God's pattern throughout history is to call imperfect people into His plans. Moses doubted his voice, yet he was called to lead. David was the youngest shepherd boy, yet he was called to be king. Peter was impulsive and frail, yet he was called to be a rock of the early church. The open door is not about worthiness. It is about willingness. The question is never whether you are flawless. It is whether you will say yes. Blessings shared become blessings multiplied. When you step through an open door, it is rarely for yourself alone. The abundance you walk into is meant to overflow into others. The knowledge you gain can be taught. The resources you receive can be shared. The healing you experience can inspire. To step through is not only to claim a blessing, but to become a blessing. This outward flow ensures that the door you enter does not become a cul-de-sac, but a channel. Blessings were never meant to stop with you. They are meant to pass through you, creating ripples that extend far beyond what you see. Life is filled with seasons when doors remain closed, and those moments are hard. But when the door finally opens, it is not a time for hesitation. It is a time for courage. The courage may feel small, like a trembling hand on a doorknob, but small courage is enough when it is backed by trust in a faithful God. Step through even when your knees shake. Step through even when doubts whisper. Step through because the blessing on the other side is not only for your own soul, but for the countless lives that will be touched by your obedience. Every open door carries both gift and responsibility. The gift is the opportunity itself. The responsibility is to honor it with courage. To live in the overflow of blessing requires both recognition of what is given and willingness to walk into it fully. Fear may always linger at the threshold, but fear loses its power once you move your foot forward. Each step into the unknown is a declaration that you trust the one who opened the door. Each step is a seed planted into the soil of destiny. Each step is a testimony that blessings are meant to be lived, not just longed for. So when the moment comes, when the door swings wide and light spills through, do not linger too long in the hallway. Do not convince yourself you are unworthy. Do not wait for the absence of risk. Step through with faith, with courage, with hope. Let the blessing become real in your life, not a vision admired from afar. Step through and watch as the overflow reaches not only you, but everyone your life touches. Step through because this is what you were made for. Step through because open doors do not wait forever. Step through because the God who opened the door is already waiting on the other side. Doors will keep opening and closing across your lifetime, and that truth should stir both awe and urgency in your spirit. Some of those doors will slam shut, and you will feel the sting. Others will swing wide, and you will feel the thrill. But behind both is a God who sees more than you see and knows more than you know. The choice before you is not whether doors exist, they do. The choice is whether you will recognize the blessing in them and have the courage to walk forward when the path is set before you. Think about what waits if you don't move. The blessing that could have overflowed into your family, your health, your calling, your future may never reach its full power. The river may dry up at the banks if you refuse to step in. That is the cost of hesitation. That is the weight of fear. But now lift your heart to the other possibility. Step through, and your life becomes more than survival. Step through, and peace takes root where anxiety once lived. Step through, and blessings multiply, not only in your own hands, but through your hands into the world. Step through, and you discover the secret the soul longs for, that God's abundance was never meant to be locked away, but to flow through those who trust Him. This is the hour for courage, not delay. This is the moment to embrace wisdom over fear, faith over doubt, action over paralysis. Walk forward, not because you are certain of every step, but because you trust the one who opens the way. The blessing is waiting. The door is open. The time is now.